Good morning, everybody. It's Jean-Marie. So I had a couple of requests to show how to make a coiled coil. I had made a coiled coil in one of my necklaces for the March Bargain Bead Box. It was a copper coil in the center focal of the necklace that I had the little dangle hanging from. So I thought I would demonstrate by making this pair of earrings. So a coiled coil is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It is a coil that is then again coiled. It has this little seed bead look to it, and honestly the hardest part of it is the coiling portion because I coil by hand. If you have a coiling gizmo, which is like this little tool that attaches to your desk, it has a crank on this side and a rod here that attaches to your wire, and you just crank and crank and crank and crank, and you can crank out coil like super quick. I don't have one. I use my fingers. So it takes a little more time, but that's okay. I don't mind. I sit and watch TV and I work on my coil. It takes me about for this earring I used a 3-inch piece of coiled coil, which is actually 9 inches of coil. So you're going to coil about 3 times what you want your piece to be, because by the time you recoil it, it uses up so much of it. So for this 3-inch piece of coil, I did a 9-inch coil. Hope that makes sense. Because we're coiling twice, so your first coil is going to be 9 inches. So basically I do is take a piece of 20 gauge scrap wire, just an old piece I've had kicking around from many projects. I have this coil of a roll of 24 gauge gold wire. I think I got this through Amazon. There's not a whole awful lot of it left because I've done this earring, and it does use a lot of, 9 inches of coiling is a lot of wire, and you're doing it twice for 2 ear, to make both earrings. So I've used a lot of it, but this portion does get a little a little tender on the fingers, especially when you've done it 3 times this morning like I have, because I messed up my video twice. So hopefully this one I can finish. So you're going to take your scrap wire, and down here on the end of it, an inch and a half or so, just start your coils. And this is, the same you would be doing if you were doing some type of wire wrapping. You would just, only you're doing much more of it. Let me get that wire out of my way. And you're just going to keep coiling around your 20 gauge wire, pushing them together, keeping it tight like a spring. Once you get going and you got a little more room, you can start going a little bit faster. It'll start flowing for you then. But you're just going to keep doing that. Okay, now in this one I have some gaps. So what I find is that every time I compress, which is I'm going to try to do this under the camera without hitting everything with wire, but so I grab the end of it, because as you coil up, you're going to get up here and you're going to need to push your coils down. So I usually just take my pliers and hang on to my end, take my wire jaw and push it down to give myself more room. After a while, or I could just do this bend thing. I could do a bend thing down here because I do want to compress those. So if I did this and get up to that bend, of course it's going to go right around the bend on me. Normally it will not go around the bend, but when I want it to not. And this is why I'm on my 3rd video. But as you push it, you can see it just compressed all those little gaps. So, and you don't have to do it this soon. You can wait till you have, enough to push down. I just wanted to show you guys. So bring it back up here. Back up here, and just, and then you just continue coiling. But ultimately you want to try not to get those gaps as you're coiling. And again, once you get going, it is much easier. It gets a little more fluid. The first of them are always a little rough, But that's all we're going to do. We're just going to keep coiling that wire just like that. Let me get up here and see if you can see it. If I can sit still long enough to stop shaking, it might actually be clear. There we go. So you can tell the first ones are a little bit gappy, and then as I got going it started to tighten up on me. And that is perfectly normal. You can go a little beyond what you want, so you can cut back to there if you want to, or you can wait till you're all done and go back and uncoil those first few and tighten them up. Either way, whatever works. Okay, so away with that. So I have my 9 inches of coil here, all coiled up. My camera probably isn't going to get both ends because I got you zoomed in a lot here, but I've got 9 inches of coil. So at this point, what you want to do is take your pliers, and sometimes this can be a little tough because the wire is really coiled tightly on that center wire, but you got to pull that center wire out now. And it can take a little doing sometimes. Sometimes you have to push down on this end a little bit and just keep working it and working it till you finally get it all the way off. I started mine already because I don't want to spend a lot of time. Well, I'll show you. Okay, so if you're stuck, trim your end of your wire right off and then push these coils down, push them down, push them down. Keep doing that, and eventually you'll get the whole thing sliding, because you do need to pull it out. So let's see how I did. See if I can get it out of there. Oops, I went right over them. This is one of the hardest parts, is just getting it off this other wire afterwards. And you could use the center wire, but it's a 20 gauge and I like to go down to at least a 24. And it does take some tugging. Alright, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull. I can feel it move. You can hear it. You know it's starting to move. Unfortunately, I think it moved the wrong way because I have less up here now. There we go. And unfortunately, I don't know of an easier way to do this. Just keep moving it down best you can until it finally wants to slip. But on the bright side, your coils are nicely compressed now. It has started moving because I got a little more room up here now. Alright, I'm going to bring in a different pair of pliers at this point and see if I can't push it off. Nope. Sorry for all the shaking. It does take some work, I'm not gonna lie. Oh, there we go. It's starting to come off. This is when having a nice strong man around would be nice. Oh, there we go. Sorry about all the shaking, but I finally got it off there. Now let's see if we can reorganize everything here. Okay, so now I've got this nice coil, I can come in at this point and just trim the little ends off. That one off. And this end's a little messed up, but I'll just trim it off there. So now we got the coil, and it has loosened up some from being pulled off. So I'm going to take my 22 gauge parawire, and you're going to want at least, well, at least 1.5 the times of your 9-inch piece of coil. Yeah, so I'm gonna go about 15 inches, I think, just to make sure I have enough of it. Because believe it or not, even though your coil is getting coiled along with it at the same time, it will eat up the wire on the inside much, much faster. So then you're just going to take that wire, and even at this point, if you wanted to just use this as a decoration, you put your little wire loops on both ends or whatever, you've got a beautiful little coil there. I did separate mine quite a bit, so I'm going to have to fix that. It was really tough on this one. Usually they're not quite so bad, but evidently I coiled really, really tight this time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, now that I'm through, I'm just going to make a bit of a knot area down here, just so it can't come off on me. And I'm just going to take my nylon drop pliers again, and I'm going to grab my wire and just recompress it. Whoops, and I did push it right off that loop. So let's bring it back up. Now push it back on this way. It did recompress really well though. I think I'm just going to pull it out and start over. But it compressed that wire up again for me nicely. All but this little bit on the end. Well, it's actually not too bad. It looks pretty good. So I should be back to like a 9-inch piece of wire again now. Still a little over. I could compress it a little bit more, I guess. These pieces of coil, though, they look so pretty, and like if you do a wire weaved stone or something like that, adding these little coils to the edges of it and stuff, it's just, it really makes it stand out. Having a little bit of difficulty getting through the end here. I'm going to trim one of those little loops off. Looks like it got a little bent. Alright, I'm going back to something a little stiffer for just a minute. Actually, let's just try going through that end. We'll try that. With the same piece, we'll start at this end that doesn't want to work so well. It's just a little pinched. There we go. And this right here is the 22 gauge. This is the 24. If I hadn't warped this so badly, if I hadn't pulled it apart so badly, getting it off in that 20 gauge, I wouldn't have to have struggled so much with it here. It seems to be the name of the game this morning, to struggle, which is why I've had to reshoot this so many times. I really hope this one will actually work. A little bit of struggling is okay to show you guys because, you know, I want you to know that it isn't going to be perfectly easy and that if you're struggling, you're not doing anything wrong. But at the same time, I don't want it to look like it's impossible to do because it really isn't. For some reason, this piece of wire just doesn't want to do does not want to do the distance. Okay, so I am going to go back to the 24 gauge wire that I used originally because it's just not, that 24 is just not, that 22 is just not wanting to go through for me. And this will work just the same. So we'll put this one in instead. Yeah, see, way easier. It just did not want to go through there. That's okay. Okay, so at this point, I am going to need, what did I do with it? That same scrap of 20 gauge. And right here on the very end, you want to try to get one of those rings separated a little bit. My nails are a mess now from dragging on that wire, but that's what's going to happen. So I got one separated just a tiny bit. And I'm going to hold it up here. Actually, I want to come down here a little bit. I can push it up as I go. And I'm going to put my fingernail in that one open one and hold that and the wire, maybe, at the same time until I get this going. Otherwise, that wire will keep springing on you. And then, just like we did coiling this one, we're going to coil it around that 20 gauge wire. And this is your coiled coil. You're taking a coil and you're recoiling it, making a coiled coil. Now at this point, I'm going to take this piece that I pulled up and I'm going to pull it back into place and just kind of push it down a little bit. Take that little end wire and I'm just going to wrap it around this one just to give it some stability while I'm coiling. So now I've got this nice coil and I'm just working it slowly, taking my time, paying attention to what I'm doing around that same 20 gauge wire that we used to create the first coil, just that scrap wire. And right now all we're using is the 24 gauge coil, a 24 gauge wire through the center of that coil, and we're coiling around that 20 gauge. So I hope that makes sense. But look how it looks. Isn't that pretty? It looks like little beads. And then just grab your pliers, move it down a little bit, give yourself some more room. Like I said, this 9-inch coil is only going to end up being about 3 inches of coiled coil. But it goes really quickly. It's not hard. Again, the hardest part of the whole entire thing is creating the first coil and sliding it off that wire. That part is not fun. And I don't normally struggle as bad as I did today. I got it a little too tight, and also I'm trying to stay under the camera, and it makes it really difficult to get a good tight grip on it and give it a yank. So as you start to coil this, you see that this coil, these little rings, kind of separate a little bit. So at this point, that is basically what I used in my necklace. I just made a loop in my wire here and a loop in my wire here, cut off my little hangy piece, and that was what I would have used. But we're going to go a little bigger because we are making that earring. Now again, you could cut these off any size you want. You could cut off that much and use it in a section, you know, cut off 4 or 5 of them, put them in between beads. You could cut off 2 coils, a whole mess of 2 coils. Make spacer beads out of them in between your beads. There's so much you can do with it. And they are really a lot of fun to make. I mean, you can sit on the, like I said, like I do, sit on the couch and watch your favorite YouTube video. Or, you know, a movie or whatever. And just coil away. So there, we are at the end of it. It is all coiled up. And that's what we have. So we can go ahead and trim. I have already gone around my bar a couple of times. So I can go ahead now and trim it off. It does have a little bit of a burr there. I actually don't want to push it down too hard until I've moved it down my cord though, because actually, you know what? This one comes out of it anyway. There we go. That was just our coiling one. So at this point, you would use it on whatever you want to make your jewelry out of. You would use it for, you know, your necklace focal, or you could put bead string and wire through it. You could put cord through it. You could put whatever you want through it. You could put leather through it if you had wrapped it around like I did it on a 20 gauge. If I had done it on a 16 gauge heavy wire, it would have left my ends bigger, and I could have put it on leather. So, you know, play with it, have fun with it, do whatever, you know. I mean, you can see I got that one a little bit off right there. Just going to retighten it a little bit more and hopefully pull it back in. If not, oh well, you know what, who's going to notice it? So here is my coil. Now I'm going to go back to my original, yep, 24 gauge and cut off a piece. Not my 24, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to 22 gauge because I want it strong enough to create the earring loop. So this is that Parawire 22 gauge. I think I said it in this video. I don't know. Like I said, I've done this video so many times it messed up. So I have a piece of 22 gauge gold Parawire, and I'm just going to cut off about 6 inches or so. This piece should be approximately 3 inches now. It's a little over, but let me loop it, see if I need to cut some of it off. Oh, I definitely do. So I got a little more there than I needed, which is fine. I'll just come back here, see how much I need. Make sure it's right. Oh, 3 inches is what I needed, so I'm going to cut off about a 1/2 inch. Just like that. Now I should have my 3 inches. And I do. And this piece, what did I do with my pliers? There we go. This piece, I can take this end that's rough and just kind of bend it down inside that hole a little bit so that it's not pokey. And then I could always use it for a link or something somewhere. You know, I could cut it in half and use 2 of them. Use them on 2 sides of a bead, or, I mean, it won't go to waste. I'll use it for something. It'll just go in my scraps for now, and I will use it for something else. So to begin with the earring, let's just get this wired on. And I do want to push that little open piece down, so we don't want any scratchy bits. So we just push it down onto the wire and kind of tuck it in. These are not the right pliers for this. There we go. And I just tucked it into that hole the best I could so that it's not scratchy. And now at this point, we're just going to form them into a loop or a hoop. I guess still got it bigger than that one, don't I? How did I manage to do that? That's okay. We'll just take a little more off. I made this earring like last week, so hard telling why. That's a good opportunity for you to see that you can cut it, play with it, make, do whatever you need to with it, work with it. There we go, that's closer. So the other piece I ended up cutting off was this little piece. And it's like a little 2-link section, so I have 1, 2, 3, I got 4 from there if I cut them all into little 2-link sections to make something with. So now you're just going to cross them at the top like you would any type of, like if you were doing a briolet bead or anything like that. And stand one of them up. Wrap the other one around it a couple times. Try to keep it tight and hold your coil together at the same time. Let your coils look like they're part of the whole thing. There we go. Just like that. And I've got so many tools here now I can't find the one I want. Trim that one off. So now you get this nice little straight piece here to put your bead on or to decorate in any way that you desire at this point. It's still bigger than that one. Oh well, that's okay. We don't mind, right? It's actually a different color too, so I used a totally different wire than I did with that one. But you know what? The concept is the same. And, okay, it's not earrings anymore. It's a pendant. But, yeah, it just shows you, if you're doing them both together, not a week apart, you're going to remember which wire you use because you're doing it all at the same time. And you're going to match. But this is to teach you, right? It's just to teach you how to make the coil. And we did that. We accomplished that. So, and you can try to push your coils down that you coiled up there a little bit. So your bead doesn't look like it's setting too far up. Or you could put a small bead and then this bead and then a small bead. I mean, at this point, it's yours. Do whatever you want to do with it. But you do want to make sure your bead is down on your coils really tight when you get ready to make your top loop. Which you can actually do when you're wiring it anyway. But then you're just going to do your normal wrapped wire loop. I'm going to try and get this under the camera and not bump everything on you. It's just going to be hard because I'm holding it at the wrong angle. And my bead's going to spin. Let me find my tool. I know I'm out of frame right at the moment. Just bear with me. And there you have it. Not too shabby. These are my crappy blotters. What do I do with my good ones? I don't know why I don't just throw them away, but I save them for cutting stuff I don't want to ruin my other ones on. So there's our earring, or our pendant, or whatever we want it to be. So there we have it, everybody. That is the general directions on how to make a coiled coil. At this point, do what you want to do with it. Like I said, we could take these and we could cut them into, let's see if we can get it somewhat even here. We can make it, I don't know where the other end is, little tiny ones to put on. Put on beading wire and just do like little links. I mean, you do have to push your ends in. You do want to make sure your little sharp ends are pushed in. Actually, with these little short ones, it's even easier because all you have to do is kind of just put them in here and give them a little push. Get all your little sharp edges in. And then you get little beads to work with. So these are a couple of coils I did in copper. This is just the original coil. It could be used, you know, like you could do the same thing here, like I did on my other necklace. Use it as a focal, put a little wire through it, make your loops on both ends, and bend it to whatever you want. This one is a coiled coil done with, gosh, I'm going to say, I made this a long time ago. I'm going to say it's probably a 26 or a 28 gauge wire over, probably over a 24. It's really small. I don't even remember what I made it for, but I obviously never ended up using it, so there you have it. I think I was just trying to do it. I was watching a tutorial, so I was trying to do it, and that was what I did. But then I never put it in anything. So, have fun with your wire, you know. Buy the cheap stuff at Walmart to start off with if you just want to practice for a while. Pick up a couple of rolls of that, you know, aluminum coated, color-coded 20 gauge. It's really soft. That's a great one to start with because it's very malleable, and then you can work your way to the smaller, thinner, heavier gauges of wire once you kind of have the idea of what you're doing. It's really a lot of fun, and there's so many things you can do with it afterwards. You know, you can get very creative with it after and make all kinds of pretty things. So, I have a question. I am seriously considering starting a Patreon channel. And what I would want to do is, like, once a week do some type of project like this with wire. Patreon is a paid group, though, and I'm not sure if I have enough following right now to make it worth me trying. I don't have thousands of subscribers like a lot of people that start off Patreons do. I have like 1,300. But I just want to throw it out there and see if anyone would be interested in it if I was to do that and do a weekly wiring, something a little more hands-on, you know, not just stringing beads and making pretty things, but doing maybe some wire-wrapped earrings or something along those lines. But, you know, I'll put it out there. You guys can let me know what you think. And thank you all for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this project. Please don't mind the fact that my earrings do not match. They're both very pretty. So anyway, thank you guys. Bye.